too complex. Too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. If you're watching, today is Wednesday, September 20th, 2017, and Melania and Donald Trump are both embarrassing us on the national scene. Currently, they are giving speech after speech in front of the UN, and it's kind of bad because today, Melania showed up dressed like a fluffy sponge cupcake in this bright pink puffy gown. And not to make fun of what she wears, but I will say that if I'm disappointed in one aspect of this administration, it's that I really expected Melania to be more of a fashion icon because she was a model before she became the First Lady, but I've been very disappointed in her fashion. That's neither here nor there. Today she gave a speech that was against bullying. And in the speech, she calls on others to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule. And I just think it's ironic because not even the day before, Donald Trump was then name-calling Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man as he was threatening to annihilate the entire country of North Korea if they didn't basically fall in line with the American agenda. So I think, Melania, charity starts at home, and I think if you really care about bullying, you will talk to your husband first and foremost, who for some reason believes that Namibia is a country in Africa. Now, for the life of me, after giving a speech in front, I don't know why Donald Trump was giving a speech at lunch in front of a bunch of African heads of state. That's embarrassing enough on its own. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, one, you mentioned the Ebola epidemic and how countries sort of overcame the epidemic. You didn't mention Liberia in that, first of all. So I'm still kind of feeling some type of way. But then beyond that, I'm having a little trouble with the French press today. All right, there we go. Very good and thick coffee. Namibia. So were you trying to say Namibia? Were you trying to say Zambia? Or were you trying to say the Gambia? Like, just send us an email and let us know what you were trying to say, and then we'll clarify. Because I don't, for the life of me, understand. But despite all of the nonsense and shenanigans that we've come used to in this administration, there are very serious problems in the world today. And so this episode is really more about that. In Mexico City, within the last 24 hours, there was an earthquake, very significant earthquake, I believe a magnitude 7.1 earthquake there in Mexico City, which has led to significant deaths and damage in our border country. We have now, according to the New York Post, this is likely as reported by the USGS, they are saying that there are likely at least 1,000 fatalities because of this earthquake. Now, hopefully that is not the case. The last official report of the death toll from this earthquake was 220. In addition to that, the island nation of Puerto Rico is now really completely out of power and has been devastated by Hurricane Maria that was sweeping through the Caribbean, has been sweeping through the Caribbean and still is. And so, you know, again, I hate the whole thoughts and prayers with people who are suffering. You know, if you can do more, if you can donate, if you can support, if you can send any resources to Mexico or Puerto Rico, also not forsaking those in Florida and those in Houston and other parts of Texas and the Gulf Coast that have been impacted by this really terrible hurricane season that we've been experiencing, then by all means, please do your very best to support those. Ironically, as we've discussed before, the American Red Cross is facing a bit of a scandal today because they had an online system that was supposed to help people register for immediate aid, and the system crashed. And due to that, many people who were promised aid weren't able to receive it. And we're talking specifically Harvey victims from weeks ago. And so it just kind of underscores, I understand things happen and computers fail sometimes, but when you have an organization that is existing to help people, people can't eat excuses. They can't live in an excuse. I can't bathe in an excuse. So let's focus on getting the job done. And when you don't have a system or computer system in place, I mean, who's to say, if you're saying people had to register online anyway, how are people necessarily doing that if they were in shelters or they were receiving other types of aid or they have been displaced in other ways? Maybe some people lost, their devices altogether. And how are these people getting this stuff done? So I think, the Red Cross is good for some things, but again, I think with the incurring frequency and increase of just natural disasters that we're facing in our country and abroad, we really are going to have to step up our game when it comes to philanthropy. We're going to have to step up our game in terms of systems and the way that we are offering to help people. No excuses. We got to get past this stuff. So that's my call, my plea to the American Red Cross. If you donate to the American Red Cross or you donate blood, by all means continue to do that. Any good thing that you're doing for somebody else is appreciated and good and helpful, but we also need to make sure that we're holding these groups accountable for what they're bringing to the table. Now, what I really want to talk to you about today is this disastrous Graham-Cassidy bill. This is an amendment to basically a repeal effort for the Affordable Care Act. Now, this particular effort still does not have a rating or any information or approval by the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a bipartisan effort. And that's been sort of the downfall of most of the bills up to this point, that have tried to come and say, like, okay, well, we're going to do this, but without saying, the CBO provides information about how much this, the bill particular will impact the current state of Americans. So it is estimated still that 32 million people would lose their health coverage by 2026 because of this legislation. It is also assumed that because of this, Medicaid will be completely annihilated by, don't quote me on this, by I believe 2023, somewhere between 2023 and 2026, that there will be no Medicaid program at all. It will be completely defunded by then. And so we really have to be vigilant in these times because as of right now, there is a deadline of September 30th. Now, at some point in time during the initial repeal efforts set forth by the GOP, a rule was suspended within the Senate that would allow for essentially the passing of a bill or the passing of a vote or a bill based on only having 50 votes as opposed to having 60 votes. There's a deadline for that stipulation that expires on September 30th. So before that date, there's going to be some vote in probably both the House and the Senate that will determine whether this repeal effort moves forward. Now, we know in previous disastrous repeal efforts, the House folded and they went ahead and gave it to the GOP anyway. Now, in this last effort, it was forestalled because brave senators, including the senator from Arizona, John McCain, stepped up and really, made his voice heard and became sort of a modern-day hero for us by voting against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And so we are really just, one, counting on those same Republican senators to hold their own and really provide the same level of coverage that they did in this coming vote, because that will protect us. And hopefully, if we can get past that September 30th date, then we will have it secured at least through the next enrollment period, through another year of coverage for people. And then at that point, we'll have the midterm elections that will happen in 2018. And essentially, people will be protected throughout. People will have the opportunity to have protection for their health coverage through the next year. And then by the time that vote comes around in 2018, we'll be electing a new a new Congress they will be taking office in 2019, and therefore we won't be facing these types of attacks again. So really, we got about another 2 weeks that we have to be focused. And so the big push now, there's a couple things at play here. One, while we can, do I trust John McCain to save this? No. I don't trust John McCain at all. But the reality is, John McCain is also very close friends with Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham is one of the co-authors of this particular legislation. And now, we've all known for some time that Lindsey Graham wasn't worth a flip. But, essentially, if based on the strength of their relationship, Lindsey Graham is able to convince John McCain to come over, then essentially we are faced with another difficult challenge and test. And all of the progress that was made in terms of the coverage that Americans receive in healthcare not being able to be denied because of pre-existing conditions, being extended time to pay your insurance premiums if you lapse over 60 days. I think before the Affordable Care Act used to have 60 days or a 1 month lapse period, and now it's up to 90 days for your policy. Maximum caps and lifetime caps for the annual cap on your what your insurance company can be expected to pay out on your behalf. Those are things that are really critically important, especially if you are terminally ill or have or chronically ill or have a pre-existing condition of any kind. There are staggering numbers that are coming out about the amount of coverage or spikes that you can expect in your premium or healthcare coverage if you become pregnant and have to have a child, or if you have diabetes, or if you have any other similar types of heart disease. There are really strong problems when you come to repealing something like this. And effectively, this is going to affect a very significant portion, upwards of 15% of the American economy, if this bill is repealed. So that's something we need to be focused on. What can you do, you ask? You must call your senator and representative. Now, here in Atlanta, Georgia, I am fortunate enough to be in the 5th Congressional District, which means that John Lewis, my hero, is my congressman. And so John Lewis is one of the foremost leaders and staunchest supporters of the Affordable Care Act. I know fully well that he's not going to be swayed in voting that legislation down. Now, I do live in Georgia, and so there are two very Republican senators, Johnny Isakson and I don't even know his first name, Perdue. Doesn't matter his first name. Perdue and Isakson are my senators, and I have been calling them relentlessly. I look them up online. I've been tweeting them every day. So I send at least one tweet a day and call them once a day. Johnny Isakson is a little bit older, a little longer in the tooth, so he actually has people who answer his phone for him. His voicemail is full though, but it takes no time to call these people, let your voice be heard. Perdue, now when I call him, it just always goes to voicemail, every single time, but it's fine. We just want to fill that voicemail up. So we want to make sure that they know that we are upset about this and we are focused. This is the time to call your senator. You got to do it every single day. And your representative if you live in a blue, in a red district specifically. It is not fruitful to call someone else's representative or someone else's senator. What you can do, however, is if you have people that you know that live in these other districts with other senators and representatives, make sure that your friends and family are calling their senators and representatives. We've got to have all hands on deck here. And all you do is you dial 202-224-3121. That will put you to a switchboard. You'll be able to call and, actually access your particular representative. And then you want to tell them who you are, your full name preferably. You want to tell them where you're from. I like to say my city and my state so that they know, or specifically the congressional district. And I also want to say, tell them specifically to vote no on the Graham-Cassidy bill. You also want to tell them why. Now, if you want to tell them because of your sympathy for pre-existing conditions or annual caps or any other reason that you want to be focused on this particular legislation and saving it, maybe you have a personal story or testimony about how the ACA has helped you. All of that information is helpful. Tell your story, make your voice be heard. And this is your opportunity to do so. I will say that I have never called a representative or a senator before this administration, before this push. But the constant outcry of Hillary Clinton and Senator Kamala Harris have encouraged me to do that, to every single day call my senators, call my representatives, and make sure that they know where I stand on this issue. Now, this is the third major attempt for a repeal on the Affordable Care Act, and that is significant because they're pulling out all stops now. Like we said, there is a September 30th deadline. And what that means is they only have this last shot, this is a last-ditch effort to get this done, while they only need 50 votes plus their tiebreaker in Vice President Pence's vote as the president of the Senate, because he's vice president of the United States. You definitely want to be aware that we're kind of in this alone. And when I say that, what I mean is that there's people who are liberal, there's people who are progressives, there's people who are Democrats who aren't necessarily going to be pulling their weight. We've seen over the last few days an increase in bot activity, especially from the alt-left. We see a number of surrogates from the Bernie Sanders campaign who are actively pushing a distracting campaign for voters and people who are Bernie Sanders supporters to be calling their senators not to prevent the repeal of ACA, but to instead push Bernie's Medicare for All bill, which is really Representative John Conyers' bill, but that's neither here nor there. And so we really have to be aware of that. Last week, Bernie released his Medicare for All proposal. This Friday, he's going to have a rally in San Francisco. This was tweeted out by Roseanne DeMauro. You know, again, not one of my favorite people. But this is, again, Roseanne DeMauro is one of the people who is a staunch supporter of our revolution, who eventually endorsed Donald Trump based on Donald Trump saying that he was going to propose or support universal health care, or that everyone will be covered, that statement. Based on that, this nurse who ran a super PAC that wasn't really a super PAC because it was nurses who ultimately endorsed Bernie Sanders, who ultimately went from supporting Bernie Sanders as a super PAC and then endorsed Donald Trump, this is the person who's promoting this rally that Bernie's going to be speaking at, not to protect the repeal of ACA, but instead to promote Medicare for All. This is something we need to be worried about, because this is one of those myths that this, privileged, white male group on the left, the alt-left, keeps pushing. Even yesterday, Chris Hayes from All In with Bernie Sanders tweeted on MSNBC, tweeted about how, there's a couple things happening. Lindsey Graham is actively using Bernie Sanders and socialism as collateral damage to Democrats. What they're applying is the notion that basically a repeal of the Affordable Care Act is an attack on socialism and really a stronger stance on American values. Now, that's disingenuous, yes, but Chris Hayes unfortunately reported that a repeal of ACA paves the way for Medicare for All. Now, this, sadly, is the same energy and motivation that we saw from many of the Bernie Sanders supporters, including Susan Sarandon, including Nina Turner, including Sean King, who actively worked to promote the idea that by repealing the Affordable Care Act, we'd actually be, or by letting someone else become president other than Hillary Clinton, that we would be maybe advancing the agenda of covering everyone with medicine. And I think it's just really, really misguided and ignorant, and it's reckless as well. So shame on you, Chris Hayes. Shame on you, Bernie Sanders. Shame on you, Roseanne DeMauro. Shame on you, Lindsey Graham. anyone who is working to do anything other than support and protect the Affordable Care Act, which helps ensure millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, in addition to what was already covered in private health insurance, you have to be more responsible with your words. Because right now, people are hurting, and it's only going to get worse if Graham-Cassidy moves forward. Now, again, last call. Dial, please, today. If you have not called your senator, call them. 202-224-3121. It takes less than a minute to call each one of them. The last thing I want to do is just briefly discuss this culture that we see repeated in America. And I'm specifically talking about the Emmys right now. This normalizing of Trumpism. This weekend at the at the Emmys, you had, a lot of good stuff going on. Everybody got dressed up, and there was a lot of very talented people rewarded. But sadly, they wheeled out Sean Spicer, the former press secretary of the United States, under Donald Trump, to sort of spoof himself being spoofed by Melissa McCarthy on SNL. And I want to just say unequivocally that that is unacceptable and disgusting on behalf of, I believe, CBS and the Emmys. And you really have to take a better stand against lies. Sean Spicer is a liar, and beyond a liar, he's a propagandist. This man actively worked to misguide and lie to the American people, disrespecting the White House. He has been an incredible racist and misogynist with his attacks and treatment of respected reporters like April Ryan as in a part of his job. I mean, I think it's really just unacceptable that we are normalizing him by one. He was on some late night talk show, and I don't watch any of the late night talk shows, but he was on Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or one of the Jimmys this week. Then he was on the Emmys spoofing himself. This person, y'all need to stop petting these grizzly bears. They might seem boyish. People like Mark Zuckerberg, who sold ads to Russia all year, helped in basically getting all of this division sown into the American people through means that we trust, like Facebook, lied about it afterwards, got his board on board to lie about it to everybody else. We can't trust any of this. And we got to stop looking at these people who we feel sorry for. Mark Zuckerberg looks boyish, and he has a wife who is a woman of color and a child who's a child of color. And that's not enough anymore. We've got to hold these people accountable, because it's to our detriment that we keep offering these people opportunities to screw us over. So no, keep your Mark Zuckerberg. No, keep your Sean Spicer off TV. Let them people sit in a corner and think about what they've done, because we can't keep supporting it. It's absolute nonsense. We have got to resist this at the highest level and at the lowest level. So I would say tweet CBS, let them know how you feel about it, because I don't want to see this happen again. I don't want to keep seeing these people. I don't want Melania Trump at the Grammys. I don't want, what's her name? Omarosa at the Screen Actors Guild Awards. I really don't want to see Paul Manafort on television either. I mean, we've got to really recognize that these people, or not Paul Manafort, but what's the other one? Bannon, Steve Bannon. Why is Steve Bannon giving an interview? Come on, 60 Minutes, just let it be. Stop bringing these people on. Leave Kellyanne con artists alone. Don't bring these people on your shows, because it's really not acceptable what they've done. Moving on to better business, I would like to, of course, thank our friends of the show. Our Friends of the Show program is what allows this program to continue. If you donate $1 to the link on your screen, paypal.me/JKH2, you will help me buy coffee for this show. If you donate more than $1, you will help me buy more coffee or other items that will allow me to improve the production of the show. Over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of transition, changes in time, different things that I'm really trying to stabilize and work on to make this this program and this cast the best that it can be for everybody. And so I'm really working diligently on that. And I just want to thank today Barry G, Douglas A, Deborah G, Stephanie B, Renea L, Joseph R, Stephen K, and JF for their continued support and donations to Not On My Watch, but also the Counter TV. So thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to become a friend of the show, please make a donation of $1 or more to paypal.me/JKH2, and I will make sure I shout you out and thank you in the next episode on air. Lastly, I would like to announce that Headshots for Hunger, which is my fundraiser just as a photographer that I do in this studio, that fundraiser is doing quite well. We've reached the $2,700 mark, a little bit above $2,700. So about 27% of our goal of raising $10,000 to benefit victims of Hurricane Harvey. We've added to that the organization Feeding South Florida, which you can support at www.feedingsouthflorida.org today. Visit that website, make a donation there of at least $100, or you can donate to the Houston Food Bank at houstonfoodbank.org/donate. And I will provide, if you live in Atlanta and you can come to the Atlanta studio, I'll provide 2 headshots for your $100 donation. So that'll be retouched headshots. And this is a fundraiser I did before for the earthquake in Haiti. We successfully raised $10,000. This one's going a lot faster than that one's going, so I'm grateful for that. If you donate to either of those organizations and email a receipt to headshotsforhunger@gmail.com and also sign up for an appointment at www.headshotsforhunger.com. We will make sure that you get your photo shoot. And if you donate $250 or more, you will get an opportunity to do a family or group photo shoot with your friends or coworkers. And that will come with 5 retouch photos, and a number of people can be in those shots in whatever configuration you like. And that will be also offered at the same website. So make sure that you are sharing that information, signing up, helping us raise this money, because we definitely want to be mindful of our friends and neighbors in Florida and also Texas. We got a lot ahead of us, y'all. The resistance is real. We got to keep going. So as always, call your senator. Do it now. Do it today. Call your parents. Call your friends. Call your children. Call your neighbors, call your coworkers, tell them to call their senators, because it's very, very, very important. This is our last effort to get this one protected for the rest of the year. And I believe we can do it. Let's focus. We can do this. That said, I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you. Wrapping up our first shoot. This is the first shoot for Headshots for Hunger to benefit Harvey victims. Tim, why don't you tell me a little bit about what motivates you to get involved in?
Currently, I live in New York, and it seems almost a world away, and it's really easy to be complacent and say, let's just wait for the news cycle to turn one time, and all these images will be out of sight, out of mind. When it comes to the pain that people are going through, the physical loss, the loss of family members, those things never go away for those people. And this is really just a small way for me to get involved, and I could honestly we could all do way more. I appreciate you for vetting this particular charity and giving us a place where we can put our money, where we know that it's going to go to people who really need it, and that's people who are hungry in a time like this.
Too complex, much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.